give up your nuclear weapons, I guess, or so that's kind of where this came from. And on April 30th, with this specific agreement, the United States and Ukraine signed this agreement to provide the United States access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals. And I got, in looking through, it's kind of helpful to know exactly what a rare earth mineral is. So, well, briefly, I want to just read a section from the U.S. Geological Survey in describing rare earth minerals or rare earth elements.
So these are examples of what rare earth minerals are?
Yeah, these are examples of applications and exactly what, kind of given the lay of the land, because we figure we have a lot of minerals here, so why don't we have a lot of them here? Well, we do, and we'll kind of get into that here in just one second. But the U.S. Geological Survey explains that rare earth elements are necessary components of more than 200 products across a wide range of applications, especially high-tech consumer products such as cellular telephones, computer hard drives, electric and hybrid vehicles, and flat-screen monitors and televisions. Significant defense applications include electronic displays, guidance systems, lasers, radar, and sonar systems.
Wow.
Although the amount of
200 products, huh?
Over 200 products. Yeah, absolutely. And they say, although the amount of rare earth elements used in a product may not be a significant part of that product by weight, value, or volume, the rare earth elements can be necessary for the device to function. For example, magnets made of rare earth elements often represent only a small fraction of the total weight, but without them, spindle motors and voice coils of desktops and laptops would not be possible. So basically, without these rare earth elements, what we're speaking on here right now, whether it's a microphone or through the computer, would not work. And so most of the production is in China or in Chinese controlled mines that are basically mined by slave labor. That is so this kind of has a double whammy whenever we are getting these rare earth elements in buying solar panels and these other products. That's actually enriching China and also contributing to chattel slavery and slave labor in very, very dangerous conditions. So it's a pretty, I think China currently is responsible for over 90% of the world's production of rare earth elements. We do have some of those here in the United States. However, there's an ongoing battle with some of the environmental groups to actually develop and actually extract those elements from the earth. So those are some examples of what rare earth elements are in their applications.
Okay. All right.
That's specific to this deal. So this is actually the same deal that Volodymyr Zelensky was flown to Washington, D.C. to sign back in February before he blew it up. And, that got a lot of airplay. And it seems that it seems that things don't work out very well for people if they try to big time Donald Trump in a private meeting. They really don't work out well if you do it in a public setting, like what Volodymyr Zelensky did, and he found out. Especially, not only, I thought President Trump was pretty gracious there until he was really challenged. And basically, Zelensky seems like he was trying to change the deal in front of the television cameras, and that's where Vice President J.D. Vance kind of stepped in to kind of be the heavy in the exchange, and they really kind of got into it. And then President Trump basically threw Zelensky out of the White House. They were supposed to have a dinner and all this, and he's just like President Trump said, you really ought to be thanking us. We've sent you hundreds of billions of dollars, and you would be run over as a country if it weren't for us. And now you're coming here and now you're trying to make all these other demands that's not part of the deal. And so it was basically Zelensky had to apologize and show some kind of contrition, and he just overplayed his hand.
And that was April 30th. Did you say that was?
The April 30th, whenever the deal was agreed to, correct.
Okay. Okay. So
So
all right.
So if we break down like this deal and in the kind of a broad overview, the reason why this is necessary, the reason why Ukraine Ukraine is even asking for this and agreeable to this to begin with, they don't have the capability to mine these minerals on their own, but the United States does, and because it is pretty hazardous. You have to mine them out of the ground, then you have to separate the rare earth elements from the ore, and then there's a chemical process you have to use to extract it. It's a very, very involved process, and it's pretty hazardous. So, according to the reports on this deal, the United States companies will set up mining and refining operations in Ukraine, and then this investment is going to benefit Ukraine both economically from the industrial development then also the necessary infrastructure that's going to have to be built in order to support these mining operations.
So I assume that's Ukrainians are going to be providing the labor and as far as jobs and so forth, I would imagine.
Yes, that's the way that it sounds. That's the way that it sounds. But the United States will actually be providing the capital and the equipment and everything that's necessary in order to actually conduct the mining operations.
Do you know, are there locations in Ukraine already identified as to places that they're going to mine, or does that yet have to be done?
There are. They know where the rare earth minerals are, and there is some limited mining operations in Ukraine here right now, and there are American companies that are doing business and that are in operation in Ukraine at this point in time here right now. But this just kind of takes the lid off of the can and just really opens up a lot of development opportunities.
Okay. All right.
So,
great.
But the other thing that is going to be a benefit to Ukraine is that the presence of Americans and United States-based companies in Ukraine will provide some additional security because Russia will not likely attack Ukraine any further, so they do not risk harming Americans. If Americans would be harmed by Russian troops, that would be a serious escalation in the conflict, and that would incite a serious response from the United States. Given that we have an actual capable, competent president in the White House now, and not somebody in a walking coma.
I would think, Brett, that's a really key part of this whole deal. I really think is the security that goes along with the presence of American companies and Americans in these operations.
100%. No, absolutely, and it's really that's really key, and it's actually better security than just having a written agreement that Great Britain and the United States were going to provide. Would move in to provide security for Ukraine. This is more preemptive. Americans are there, so the conflict isn't going to happen to begin with.
Do you know, will there be other nationalities represented other than Americans? I mean, will Great Britain be putting people there, and other European countries? Do you know?
Well, that's possible, and because there is a European aspect to this that we'll hop into here in just a minute.
Okay.
But I think that seems to be yet to be determined. That the agreement is chiefly between Ukraine and the United States at this point. So there isn't any other foreign investment that's involved in this deal.
Okay.
In this particular deal.
All right.
So we talked about kind of what Ukraine gets out of this. So what's the United States get out of it? And so the United States is going to have access to these rare earth minerals or rare earth elements for manufacturing without relying on the slave labor that we talked about a little bit earlier, in that China employs for mining these elements. This also has the additional benefit of harming the Chinese economy and decreasing their global influence, because now maybe instead of supplying 93 or 95% of the rare earth minerals, maybe we can get that down into 80, 85 or 70%. And so that's going to decrease the revenues going into the Chinese Communist Party, and then also, like I said, just decrease their influence as well.
Okay, right.
As it stands, the reports show that Ukraine will actually maintain control of the mining operations, and there'll be a fund that will be set up to keep the proceeds from the mineral sales, and the profits will be split 50-50 between the United States and Ukraine.
Okay.
And theoretically, this should allow America to recoup some of the hundreds of billions of dollars that the Biden administration shoveled into Ukraine in what many feel, and myself included, it was just a massive money laundering operation. But there's not anything that specifically in the agreement that specifies that Ukraine will pay back the $200+ billion that we've actually sent them.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
The wording in the agreement was pretty interesting as well, because it has a lot harsher tone than what has been public previously. President Trump always, the media would rip him for saying nice things about Vladimir Putin, and really, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you're going to go to negotiation and you're just trashing one of the parties in the negotiation, they're a little bit less likely to be cooperative. At least go into the negotiation in a good mood. So I think that President Trump reads this and says, "Hey, you know what? If I can kind of stroke Vladimir Putin's ego just a little bit, we might have a better opportunity to come up with an agreeable deal that benefits everybody, including the United States."
Yeah.
So with this tone, though, it actually refers to Russia having a full scale invasion of Ukraine. It's not just that they just came across the border. I mean, it's actually calling the attack that Russia made on Ukraine a full scale invasion. And it also states that there's no person or company or country who financed or supplied the Russian war machine in their invasion of Ukraine will be allowed to benefit from the reconstruction of Ukraine. So that's something that's very very important there as well.
Yeah.
And then for the European involvement, it is interesting to note that the agreement also covers oil and natural gas and other fossil fuel resources, which are going to be of more advantageous to our European allies. We're not going to be pumping natural gas and oil out of Ukraine and bringing it over here to the United States. That's going to be something that's going to benefit the Europeans, European continent. Okay. And the acknowledgement, the agreement acknowledges that Ukraine's desire to join the European Union, but it does not address anything about NATO membership. So Europe might be a little bit more involved at some point if Ukraine membership in the European Union actually goes forward. And personally, Vladimir Zelensky isn't going to call me up and ask me, but if I had a vote, if I could give him some advice, I would tell him to stay as far away from the European Union as possibly can, because that's just a bad association. So
maybe that's another assignment for you, Brett.
Maybe that's another assignment. I guess that could be breaking down the damage of the European Union. Well, that might take up a few different a few shows to go through that. But
well,
so that's kind of that's kind of where the agreement stands and
Okay.
the basic framework of the agreement.
Okay. Yeah, it's our time's about up on this segment. So, well, we'll see how it develops. Certainly, some benefits to us there that are yet to be realized, but we'll see how it stands, see how it goes. Yeah,
100%. It's interesting, and I think that it's definitely I think it's definitely a step forward, and it could work out very, very well for the United States and Ukraine.
Yeah. Brett, thank you very much, bud. Thank you. And
thank you, Dale. Appreciate it.
We'll get you another assignment very soon here.
I'll be right here.
All right. Thanks, Brett. Thank you.
All right.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that update on the Ukraine minerals deal from Brett Sterling. I think that was very informative, I thought. So I want to thank Brett for doing that for us. So with that, we will sign off, and everyone have a great evening, and we'll see you on our next airing of COS Today. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, Brett does a good job on those.
Excellent job. Yep. It's digging deep and coming up with some very, very timely and interesting comments. And, that's what happens when you have somebody who thinks outside the box and actually presents things that benefit our country. But,
Yep.
The guy's after making preemptive moves to eliminate a war, I think,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm already thinking of some topics for Brett's next report. So we'll get him. We don't want to lose him, so we'll get him working some more. Well, Ken, how about you tell us about that QR code up in the
that QR code there, that's our support QR code. Basically, we talk about this a lot as far as somebody who's enjoying the programming that we're putting out as a way of taking your smartphone and capturing that QR code and just put in your name and email address, and you'll get access to our platform. Platform has a number of our contributor series all together there, so you can kind of go back and look at things that maybe you had never seen before that we've done. So, as well as be able to chit chat with other folks that are shown support and have signed into our platform. So, get your smartphone out and take a shot of that and show your support.
All right. Good deal. Scan the QR code. Oh, I'm getting good at that, Brett. I'll tell you, I'm getting better, much better.
I bet you are. Yep.
I find at the grocery store opportunities to that you see the sign, the price is such and such with the digital coupon. And of course, there's a QR code there for you to scan to get the digital coupon. So,
and the funny thing is, Dale, it's not new technology. The QR code's been around a long time.
Yes, it has.
It's used a long time ago, but it really has gained, I guess, with the different types of technology that have evolved. It's gained a foothold in different applications. So you see it a lot more. But I mean, I see it. Television just uses it all the time now.
Well, I think I've told you this before. When I go to my grandson's high school football games, many times to get the roster, you scan a QR code there to get the roster of the player instead of getting a printed form. So
it's a lot cheaper that
way. Yeah, I guess so. Okay. Well, listen, thanks, Ken, for that update on the QR code. And let's go now to our contributor, David Punt, out of Minnesota. Dave does a Dave's Daily Dose segment for us. So this one's entitled A Little Slack. So let's bring this on and play it, and hope everyone enjoys this. Okay.
None of the loony lefty mainstream Democrat media want to talk about the Ukraine minerals deal at the moment. One of Trump's deal-making endeavors seems to be bearing fruit. And if it's good for him, it's bad for them, at least for now. This is Dave's Daily Dose on Broken Road Radio. I'm David Allen Punt. Yeah, some of the minerals are in the ground where Russian soldiers now lay their head down to take a nap. Is it possible, with all the talk about rare minerals being dug up and sold, that the Ruskies might want a piece of that? Maybe. And doesn't Orange Man Bad deserve any credit for this? Any at all? My memories of the olden days of media, back in the Kennedy and Eisenhower days, it didn't seem like a chunk of the media took it upon themselves to speak bad of the president nonstop. Even Nixon had some good days. Even Clinton. Especially Clinton. Put the Monica thing aside for a minute. Clinton presided over the days when the budget was balanced and the debt reduced. The Cato Institute cautioned me on its website that Bill was there, but that's about all he contributed. Will the Ukraine minerals deal get the lefty loonies to back off their never-Trumper line in the sand? Will they start to give the old guy some credit for something? Nobody's asking for a ticker tape parade over the lunch hour, but come on, guys, a little slack? Sure, the Ruskies are saying all sorts of negative stuff about the minerals deal. As reported in Zero Hedge, Medvedev said, Trump has broken the Kyiv regime, and now they'll have to pay for U.S. aid. Med even added that Ukraine is about to disappear. But the Ruskies are talking instead of shooting. Vlad Putin has even suggested a ceasefire or two, although it hasn't happened yet because of other conditions he demanded. But he's talking. Step 1, stop shooting. Step 2, make me an offer. We're somewhere in between. Would the naysayers rather just keep taking money from my thinning billfold and then ask for more? The Trump administration seems to have learned one of the important lessons. Let the lefties and the propaganda media howl away. How long will it take for the folks on the left to realize that the howling and pushback is not getting anyone anywhere? Maybe something over the weekend. I'm David Allen Punt.
Yeah, David had some good points there on the Ukraine mineral deal. You know, have you seen in the news where there's even talk of Trump being nominated for the for what? What am I talking about?
The Pulitzer Peace Prize. Pulitzer Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Well, I think if based on his recent trip through the Middle East bears any tell, I don't know who else you would. I really don't know who else you would nominate for that Peace Prize.
Unless it's some completely unknown to us here in the States.
Yeah, I don't know. You know,
yeah.
When you compare what they gave the prize to Obama, I mean,
it's a Nobel Peace Prize, right? That's that's
where I came up with that. The Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but I mean, you compare that to what Obama had done with his, foray into peace. I think there's no comparison.
Yeah, and evidently, I don't know many of the details on this, but the conflict between Pakistan and India, and I guess Trump was instrumental in getting that headed off or resolved or halted. I don't something like that. I don't know. Do you know too much about? You know very much about that?
I don't know much about the conflict. How long it's been going on. I know it's been a while. I don't know the length of the conflict or the details to what's involved. But I don't know how this guy keeps up with all this stuff. Honestly, and he just gets out and he's bold enough to do it. I think that's. When you look back at half of the presidents prior, nobody has the kahunas to go ahead and do what he does. He I'm sure he wakes up in the morning and says, "Hey, let's give this a try." And he's not afraid to do it.
Maybe that's Brett's next assignment is Trump's chances for the Nobel Peace
Nobel Prize. Yeah.
I don't even know when that's awarded. Do you know offhand when that's awarded?
Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah.
No.
Maybe we can Google that sometime during the show here and find out.
We'll come up with some information on that and figure out when it's done and
when that is awarded. I don't really know either. Well, listen, I took a little time this past week to delve a bit into PPP loans. Do you know what a PPP loan is, Ken?
PPP loan. Maybe personal is in there as one of the P's. I don't know.
Well, I found some interesting information, and so I put together a little presentation, and I thought I went ahead and recorded it. So I learned a little bit from this. I've heard it mentioned in the news. I've heard it talked about, but I had never paid much attention to it. So I'm going to give you a little education here, Ken. Okay.
All right.
All right, here we go. Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, host COS Today. What do you know about PPP loans, huh? This is something that struck my interest some time ago, and I wanted to because it hit the news. Oh, I don't know, just a few weeks ago, as we were leading up to Trump's first 100 days. But then it kind of disappeared from the news. But I've been wanting to follow up on this for some time. So bear with me. I got a little PowerPoint put together here. I'd like to educate everyone on what PPP loans are and where we stand with these. So let me bring this up. Now I'm going to disappear so that you can get a better look as to what I'm trying to project here. So, but I'm still here. You can hear me. Paycheck Protection Program, PPP loans. So I'd like to give you a little overview of the purpose, the problems, and at least some of the possible resolutions. So let's move on here. What are PPP loans? Well, these are small business loans that were established under the CARES Act of 2020. Okay. And the loans are administered by the SBA, the Small Business Administration. And the aim was to keep businesses workforce employed during the COVID-19 crisis. Now, that was the intent of the program. Once again, the purpose of the PP loans: prevent mass layoffs and business closures. And now these were, you'll see as we go along here, these were intended really for small businesses. Okay, but this was to help head off any possible mass layoffs of people or business closures, to cover, now this is very important, cover payroll, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. Okay. And what were they providing? They were providing forgivable financial support if all the conditions were met. Now, that forgivable financial support, that's very important, if all the conditions were met. Okay, let's keep going. Well, who created the PP loans? Well, they were initiated by Congress and signed into law by President Trump in March of 2020. Okay. And they were all part of the $2.2 trillion Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act. So that's how they got created. Well, the problems that were encountered. they were complex, and the guidelines were always changing. And while they were intended to help small businesses, as it turned out, there was a great deal of favoritism given toward larger firms and well-connected applicants. Very important, well-connected applicants. And of course, there were many delays and confusion on the loan processing. So those were the problems that were encountered in administering this program. So what happened? Here's a breakdown. The total approved, over $800 billion. The number of loans processed, 11.8 million. Amazing, isn't it? Average loan size, $67,000. Forgiveness rate, of course, very high, but supposedly very much under scrutiny. Well, I don't know about that. Well, you might guess. PP loan abuse, real world fraud. Isn't it funny? It seems like every government program, there's a way people can fraudulently get at the money. And it's just, I don't know why our country is like this. But you might know there were luxury goods bought with the fraudulent loans, exotic cars, houses, everything but what they were intended for. Fake or non-existent businesses received PP loans. I mean, fake businesses. Over 200 billion potentially lost to fraud. Isn't that amazing? 200 billion potentially lost to fraud. Like I said, billions potentially lost to fraudulent claims, funds obtained by fake businesses and ineligible recipients. Of course, the DOJ and the SBA launched investigations. This was all being investigated. So what's the resolutions? Well, tighten application and verification processes, recover funds through legal enforcement, ensure aid reaches legitimate small businesses. So that was the way these were administered. All right. So as of 2024, approximately 30 billion in PPP loans were still not forgiven or repaid. Ongoing oversight by SBA and DOJ, and of course, potential for future legislative reforms. So that's where we are with the PPP loans, and so we'll see if there's any legislation coming on this, and we'll see what happens as we go on in the Trump administration.
Well, there you go, Dale. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. I jumped the gun a little bit there.
That was informative, and here I was thinking it had something to do with personal, but paychecks, huh?
I tell you, it's just hard for me to understand how people could create a fake business in order to get to this money, or take this money and go buy an exotic car instead of doing what was intended. It's just amazing how there's a part of our country that does that type of thing.
So there's the word greed comes in, and that it gets involved in just about anything that you possibly could think of, right?
I guess so.
Well, I did a little research so we can further educate ourselves, as well as anybody who doesn't know anything about the Nobel Peace Prize. But basically, it's awarded on December 10th.
Oh,
and that's based on the death of Alfred Nobel. He died on the 10th, and so that's when it's announced. The president right now was nominated again. He was also nominated before in his first term.
yeah.
But if you look at what he's doing versus, as I gave an example of Obama. I mean, Obama won the Peace Prize for the Affordable Care Act, and when you look at the effectiveness of the Affordable Care Act, I don't know how that comes into play with something that is as large as world peace. But anyway, it is what it is. The other thing is that with all the gaming and odds makers out there now, there was 338 candidates have been nominated for this year's Nobel Peace Prize. And that includes 244 individuals and 94 organizations. So organizations are nominated for this as well. But right now, Trump has the inside track, according to odds makers. We've never had that, I think, involved with the Peace Prize before. But he's right now the front runner for that. So.
Well, I don't know. I just, the what is it? The Trump syndrome,
Derangement.
Trump derangement, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
It's worldwide. So we'll see what happens. Of course, a lot can happen between now and December 10th. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, maybe, this TDS, maybe we should get Anthony Fauci back. Maybe there's a vaccination for that or something. I don't know.
Maybe that's an assignment for Brett, huh?
Yeah.
The extent of TDS. Yeah. All right. Well, Ken, we've been presenting over on COS today over the past weeks. We've been presenting bits and pieces of this interview that one of our contributors, Diana Tellis, did with a gentleman from Ohio, Mark Paquita, who does a podcast in Ohio. GFI Ohio, I believe, is the name of the podcast.
Yeah.
And so this is another piece of that interview. Are we pretty well through? Do you recall? Are we pretty well through the entire interview?
We're getting close. Yeah, we probably have another. I'd say I didn't look real close today, but I'd say we probably have another 15 minutes maybe left on that.
Really? Okay. So yeah, we've been trying to do it in segments here. Yeah. So this segment that we're going to play, I think, has to do with amendments. Of course, the host, Mark, was questioning Diana on COS and the convention and all about COS and what we're trying to accomplish. So I think in this segment, he was talking to her about possible amendments that could be proposed at the convention.
Yeah, I think he wanted to narrow down on what it was that was looking to be proposed. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's take a look at it here. We'll be right back.
Moving on, are there specific amendments you think the Convention of States should prioritize, like term limits or the balanced budget requirement? In other words, if this had to be skinnied down, I would say this: if this had to be skinnied down to one topic, what would that topic be?
Skinny down to one topic? Wow. My first answer to that would be the one that's most likely to pass 38 states would be what I would say.
And what do you think that is?
What's that?
What do you think that is? Term limits has like 85% support or something like that with
citizen
voters.
Support. It does not really have legislative support. And
Right.
I'd like to get back to that. But let me back up a minute, because before I go on, I think there is something about the prior question that you skipped that was actually one of my favorites. So you had originally given me a question: how do I see Convention of States balancing the power between the federal government and the states? And I want to tell you the term federalism and cover that, because it is the reason that I'm here. And I've heard my boss say it too, that federalism it's not just about any one amendment, but that federalism describes that balance of power between the states and the federal government. And right now it's out of balance. The federal government has too much power. They hold money over our heads. It should never have looked like that. The states created the federal government to be diplomacy, defense, and trade, and very, very little else. Okay. So now we're backward. Okay. And federalism, any one of our amendments, any one of the amendments you can envision under our 3 topics would promote federalism. And what federalism looks like is like creating more power in the states and giving the states more power and allowing them to be sovereign in their own right. So the federal government kind of is over here and they're decentralized somewhat, not as much as I would like probably, but in some fashion, we're decentralizing the federal government and giving the states their sovereignty back, where it's what they should have had in the beginning. The founders wanted that. They didn't go here to lose that. North Carolina did not want to lose, or Virginia did not want to lose their sovereignty, that none of them wanted to lose sovereignty.
Right.
So any one of our amendments can promote federalism, and then it eliminates pork barrel spending and a lot of other ridiculous spending that you see. Furthermore, if you can envision, like, this is the way we're so bipolar, right? We're so partisan and we're so different now. This is the way we can survive that. California can still be California. Let them do their thing. I don't agree with it, but Florida can be Florida, but without the federal government imparting its power over it. And furthermore, it's safer for the states that like a federal ideology, whether it's like compare Joe Biden to Donald Trump, very different ideologies, very different ways of doing things and visions for government, right? Very different. If you can alleviate their effect on the states, then the states can be sovereign and they'd be less affected by those extreme ideologies, extreme from the far right, extreme from the far left.
Yeah, I like to use the example of healthcare with the ACA. It should be the UCA, the Unaffordable Care Act.
Yeah.
Under a true federalist kind of process or structure, we could have 50 different healthcare systems. If California wants completely socialized medicine, so be it. If Ohio wants something different, so be it. And here's what happens in situations like that. Just like it does in companies competing, there will be reports and there will be consultants who will look at those 50 programs and rank them best to worst. And then citizens can go to their legislature and say, hey, we'd like to be a little bit more like Nebraska because it seems to be working better there. And we allow the citizens to make that decision of how they should be governed and how they should be cared for, as opposed to the federal government, because we all know that nothing happens in DC without money flowing into someone's pocket. I mean, it's impossible to ignore. And so wouldn't it be great to have 50 incubators for the best idea? You come up with the best one, and then everybody embraces it. That's what would happen.
They embrace it, or I move. And I say, people,
Correct.
How many people flooded Florida during COVID and said, I like how they're doing things. I'm sick of it over here.
Bingo. That's a great example.
Not that I want to move, but like, if that's how this has to look and we're going to be so polarized, then it is what it is. So that's how we survive. I worried so much about the country being so polarized. And I came to the realization, and that's what federalism says to me, is we're our own experiments, right? Our own states are their own experiments. And we have the freedom to go where we want and to put pressure on our state.
So talking about that bifurcation, that binary yes or no, black or white, liberal conservative kind of division we've got going on, how do political divisions, let's say red states versus blue states, affect the likelihood of getting 34 states to agree on calling a convention?
I mean, it affects us a lot. It affects us a lot. It is a bit of a worry to me, because when you say we're going to reduce the size and scope of the federal government and address wasteful spending, it feels like a conservative effort. That does feel like an ideology that falls under like a Republican, the Republican Party platform. But you'd be surprised how many people. I just did a podcast with some gentlemen from Illinois, and they say to me that, when we approach, most of them are Democrats in their legislature, and when they approach them, you'd be surprised how much like you and I that they are. Ohio's first, one of our first resolutions, it might be the very first one, or maybe the second one in I have it written down here, 2015. We had a Democrat, Representative Bill Patman, was a co-sponsor in the House for our resolution in 2015, and he cited the balanced budget as his concern. That's where the Democrats have concerns. It's I don't hear any legislator get super excited about term limits. They're just not. The people are, Mark, but the legislators are not.
I had a Republican legislator.
There is a bridge to be built there.
Yeah.
And we do need to get the blue on board.
I had a Republican legislator tell me on the phone that his mind is starting to be changed about term limits in Ohio. And if many people don't know, we've got this musical chair term limits. You serve for 8 years in either body. You can sit out one term and go back. You can go to the others. And I thought,
term limit light.
Term limit light. But he's saying that because he has become intoxicated with his position. And I said to him, if you think that Ohio, after getting the lukewarm kind of light term limits we have, are going to go back on the argument that you're just getting to understand how the system works after 2 or 3 terms, I think you got a problem, my friend, because the problem is not that this is hard to understand. It's that you folks allow it to become complicated with nonsense that needs to be put out of the way. We need less experience, in my opinion, in the legislature than more.
Well, I kind of cut it off there in the middle of the sentence, didn't we?
Yeah, that's okay. They were talking about term limits. I think he went on. He goes on to probe another question, I think, and that's where we decided at least we could pick up next time around.
Okay. Well, I think most of that Diana was talking about federalism, so I thought that was a good point that she brought up there.
Yep.
So that was very interesting. Okay. What was I going to say here? All right. Well, let's check in with National and see what they've got on tap here going into this past week. We've got a new host for COS now. So I think they have changed the format of the video based on.
They allow the interns kind of pick their own. How they'd like to do it. So I know.
But anyway, it's good for us to check in and get an update on.
There you go.
On things. So let's check in with National here.
Now for a 2025 legislative recap. COS Action's Article 5 application has been introduced in 23 states this year. Connecticut filed for the first time in history, meaning that all 50 states have had active legislation for COS. 8 states advanced COS in at least one legislative committee. Those include South Dakota, Wyoming, New Hampshire, Kansas, Idaho, Montana, Texas, and North Carolina. 5 states, South Dakota, Wyoming, Kansas, Texas, and North Carolina, have passed in at least one chamber, either the House or Senate. Kansas will be carried over into next year's session. Texas finally passed the COS resolution with no expiration date. And what about 34 Ready legislation? These bills set the rules for selecting and governing commissioners to any Article 5 convention. 23 states have introduced 34 Ready bills, and we scored victories in committees in 9 states: Montana, Indiana, South Carolina, Kansas, Oklahoma, Idaho, Iowa, New Hampshire, and North Carolina. 4 states have passed 34 ready in one chamber or the other, including Oklahoma, Indiana, Montana, and North Carolina, and Indiana became the first state to successfully adopt our 34 ready legislation. Additionally, let's take a look at F3 legislation. These are bills supported by COS state teams which advocate for federalism, freedom, or fundamental rights. The state of Florida has enacted the following F3 bills into law. SB 2C enhances immigration law enforcement. SM 6C urges the Secretary of Homeland Security to provide more training for immigration law enforcement. And SB 4C imposes criminal penalties for adults who enter the state illegally after evading immigration inspection. The Georgia legislature passed SB 1, the Riley-Gaines Act, which prohibits males from competing in women's sports, as well as the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, SB 36. This law imposes the highest possible burden on government action interfering with religious liberty. In Indiana, the legislature successfully adopted SB 143, which bolsters parental rights. In Tennessee, the legislature passed the Medical Ethics Defense Act, prohibiting healthcare providers from being compelled to provide for or pay for procedures that violate their conscience. And finally, in the West Virginia legislature, we passed Senate Bill 299, prohibiting transgender surgeries and medications for minors. Congratulations to COS activists across the country for these important victories, and thank you for your efforts on these and many other pieces of legislation. It's been a jam-packed year for Convention of States. Let me know in the comments what legislative victory you're most excited about, and I'll see you next week on COS Now.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Boy, Ken, you know, we're in 50 states. We're in all 50 states.
Yep.
And of course, Indiana, as you saw, is taking the lead on some things here. But boy, we got to get past that 19 state threshold. I was hoping, I haven't heard anything on North Carolina when I think we're down to everybody. It's passed all, but now the Senate vote is all that's left, right? Have you heard anything?
Yeah, I think that's what they're on now, is waiting for the Senate. And boy, if that can happen, it can jumpstart things, I think.
I think it would. Yeah, that would be our number. That would be state number 20.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get us into
Sure
that
would.
area. Yep.
Well, Ken, let's. I'm going to change the schedule, our plan here a little bit. Let's jump on to the closing, and let's close things out here. So let's take a look at what's coming up. We got next Monday is our roundtable on the 26th. That is Memorial Day, and we are going to broadcast on Memorial Day. But the topic is really a good one. It's called Restoring Common Sense. And I think, John, we've all kind of got our each panelist has a topic regarding this that we're researching and going to report on. So I think that ought to be a very interesting roundtable, Ken.
Should be. Yep.
Yeah.
Look at that.
And then coming up on June 2nd, boy, we're almost to the month of June here, Ken. Media bias. We've got I'm going to be interviewing, as a matter of fact, tomorrow, I'm going to be interviewing this gentleman out of Ohio who has been studying media bias as a hobby for some 30 years. He's been doing this. Yeah. And very, very much focused on NPR. He claims to have an inside track to some key people at NPR. And I've talked to him briefly already, but tomorrow we're going to finalize it and record an interview with him. So I'm really looking forward to this one. This ought to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm looking forward to it because for the longest time now, it's just I look at the mainstream media really as has become a cancer on our society. It's just it's just when you purposely when your purpose is basically to sway people's thinking rather than educating people by presenting facts and letting people decide for themselves. To me, it's become a cancer, and it's got to be eradicated somehow. It has to be taken care of.
Well, I know I've got some real concerns about this and how to. You've heard me say it before. There's your truth and my truth, and how do I reconcile that? What are the real facts? How do you find out what the real facts are?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this gentleman will give us some insight as to how one can do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's coming up on June 2nd. So in the meantime, folks, anybody that has a comment about our broadcast or question, whatever, feel free to drop us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. Anything from viewers this evening, Ken, before we?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because just as we were getting ready to move into the close here, we have a viewer who made an interesting comment based on what we were just talking about a little bit with the media. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this up there because it has some interesting numbers, which we've also been looking at of lately. So this is a little comment here by Finkel. It says 8647, like Ben Franklin's letters, apparent bias media is hated by tyrants. 8647.
All right.
Thank you for that, Finkel.
Yeah. I don't know how to take that.
Well, we present both sides, so depending on how you want to look at that, I think he's bringing up. I have to look into Ben Franklin a little bit more. 8647, but
yeah,
we'll have to take a look at that.
All right, excellent. Okay, well, let's. I want to play another COS Basics segment from John Ackerman. And this is on, I think this one has to do with, does Congress have any control over the Convention of States when it happens? So let's play this COS Basics, and then we'll come back and say goodnight and close out with Maringo Mike. So, all right.
Sounds good.
John Ackerman for Convention of States, Indiana. Welcome back to COS Basics, where we've been having fun busting some myths. Today's myth is that Congress will control the convention process. The opposition is so creative in its ways of disagreeing with this completely rational process. They say that Congress will control the convention process. What utter nonsense. The myth goes like this. Congress will select the delegates and set the rules for the convention. And we believe this because of the necessary and proper clause in Article 1 of the Constitution and in the power to call the convention in Article 5. Well, that's the myth. The fact is that Congress only has the power to call the convention. That power is limited to setting the time, place, and purpose. The power to call the convention does not extend to anything else, like saying who can go or how voting works. Congress is not authorized by the necessary and proper clause to control any aspect of the convention. How do we know this? Well, we know from common sense, we know from the ratification debates, and we know from case law. And we even have Congress itself rejecting on multiple occasions the notion that it can control this process. First, just using common sense, we know that the founders did not authorize Congress to control the convention. Remember why the convention was put in Article 5 in the first place: to give the people a way of amending their Constitution should Congress fail to act. Never forget that George Mason, during the Constitutional Convention, even observed that no amendments of the proper kind would ever be obtained by the people if the government should become oppressive, unless the states had the authority to propose and ratify amendments without need of the Congress. And these people who wrote Article 5 also wrote Article 1. So you would have to assume a fair amount of stupidity on the part of the founders to think that they would grant Congress in Article 1 the power to interfere in a process designed to circumvent Congress in Article 5. Second, from the ratification debates. We know from comments made during the ratification debates that it's the states who control the process from beginning to end, not Congress. Here's a quote from the debates in Pennsylvania. "The proposed federal constitution cannot be very dangerous while the legislatures of the different states possess the power of calling a convention, appointing the delegates, and instructing them in the articles they wish altered or abolished." Close quote. Third, from case law. In a case known as Idaho versus Freeman, here's what the court said about Congress's authority in the amendment process. First, it must be recognized that Congress's power to participate in the amendment process stems solely from Article 5. Congress, outside the authority granted by Article 5, has no power to act with regard to an amendment. That is, it does not retain any of its traditional authority vested in it by Article 1. Close quote. And fourth, Congress itself doesn't even think it has this authority. Over the course of our nation's history, Congress has proposed more than 40 bills that would exert some kind of control over the convention process. Every one of those bills failed. So not even Congress believes it has the authority to interfere in the convention process. And so the myth that Congress will control the convention, busted.
Another good one from John. Yep.
Another myth busted. Yep.
Yep. By the way, I just found out, did a little Googling while we were listening to John. The Nobel Peace Prize voting is evidently a multi-stage process, but it culminates in October. Yeah. So the process starts much earlier. I guess the award is officially done on December 10th, like you found out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a deadline for nominations too. I think.
Yeah.
I think that the Donald Trump's nomination this year was actually came in after the deadline.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yeah. One of the congressmen had nominated him. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Interesting. We'll see how that develops.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Ken, I think that's a wrap for this evening. And any other comments or anything that we need to look at from viewers?
Not really. Like I said, we're fair and balanced here, so we put them all up.
Okay, I guess so. All right. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for viewing this evening. Hope you've enjoyed the broadcast. Once again, we'll be back here on next Monday with our roundtable discussion. We do that roundtable on the fourth Monday of every month. So coming up on May 26th will be our roundtable. So Ken, we'll say goodnight to everyone. Everyone have a good evening.
Enjoy the week. Have a good evening.
Hey.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.